Did the First Council of Nicaea actually change the Bible? Some people swear it did, others insist that's just a myth. But where does this idea even come from? Let's back up for a second. It's the year 325 AD, almost 300 years after Jesus. A group of Christian bishops gathers in a city called Nicaea in what's now Turkey, not too far from modern-day Istanbul. And this was called together by none other than the Roman Emperor Constantine himself. Why? Well, Constantine didn't want division tearing his empire apart. He had just become the sole ruler of the Roman Empire after defeating his rival in 324 AD, and unity was his top priority. He paid for the bishops' travel and lodging out of his own pocket and brought them together to sort out a heated argument in the church. While Constantine claimed to be a Christian, though his baptism came much later, near his death, his main concern was peace in his empire. For him, a divided church meant a divided empire, and that was not an option. This meeting would go down in history as the First Council of Nicaea. Now, many people today wonder if this council secretly rewrote or even created the Bible. But is it true? That's exactly what we're digging into in this video, so stick around. So let's break this down. First, what exactly is a council? In the Christian world, a council is basically a big meeting where bishops and church leaders get together to sort out arguments, answer tough questions about faith, and set clear guidelines for what Christians should believe and practice. It's like an ancient version of a worldwide conference call, except with robes, scrolls, and a lot more heated debates. The location itself was carefully chosen. Back then, Nicaea was a city in the Roman province of Bithynia. Today, it's known as Iznik in modern-day Turkey, not far from Istanbul. It was a practical choice, easily reachable for bishops traveling from Asia Minor, Palestine, Egypt, Greece, and Syria, while also being close to Constantine's base of power in Nicomedia. By this time, Christianity had already spread far and wide. This movement was deeply rooted, and the stakes were high. So, what was the main issue? A fierce debate called the Arian controversy. This was sparked by a priest named Arius from Alexandria. Arius taught that Jesus was not equal to God the Father. In his words, there was a time when he was not, meaning Jesus was created and not eternal. According to Arius, only the Father was truly eternal, and Jesus, though divine, had a beginning. This idea didn't sit well with many bishops. Leaders like Alexander of Alexandria and his deacon Athanasius pushed back hard. They argued that Jesus wasn't created at all but was eternally begotten of the Father, that he was of the same essence as God. The Greek word they used was homoousios, which basically means of the same substance. The debate was so heated that it went straight to the foundation of Christian teaching. Constantine, desperate for peace and unity, wanted the bishops to settle the matter once and for all. Out of these debates came one of the most important documents in church history, the Nicene Creed. This creed declared that Jesus Christ was begotten, not made, being of one substance with the Father, and it became a cornerstone of Christian faith. It didn't create the idea of Jesus' divinity, but it clarified and publicly affirmed what many Christians already believed. It drew a clear line against Arius' teaching. Now here's the part that still gets debated today. Did the Council of Nicaea actually change the Bible? Some people imagine the bishops sat down, shuffled through a stack of scrolls, and decided what books went in and what got tossed out. But that never happened. The Council of Nicaea wasn't about deciding the biblical canon at all. So here's the funny part. The whole idea that the Bible was somehow created at the Council of Nicaea didn't even come from anyone who was there. It actually comes from a quirky little manuscript written centuries later called the Synodicon Vetus. This 9th century document included all kinds of summaries and odd anecdotes about early church councils, and tucked inside was this gem of a story. Supposedly, the bishops at Nicaea gathered up all the books, laid them on the altar, prayed to God, and then, like some kind of divine magic trick, the inspired books floated to the top while the fake ones sank to the bottom. Problem solved, Bible sorted. Now, that's a great story, but it never happened. None of the actual records from the council mention it, and the people who were there don't say a word about floating scrolls or heavenly book sorting. And honestly, can you imagine? A bunch of exhausted bishops who had just spent days arguing about deep theology suddenly deciding, you know what? Let's just pile all the parchments on the altar and let gravity and prayer do the work. You can almost hear the creak of the scrolls sliding down and some poor scribe sighing, well, guess that one wasn't holy enough. It sounds less like church history and more like an ancient episode of a game show. But here's how this odd tale refused to die. Centuries later, the French philosopher Voltaire stumbled across it, likely through a 1601 publication of the Synodicon Vetus. And being Voltaire, he couldn't resist. He loved poking fun at the church, and in his philosophical dictionary, he gleefully retold the floating book story with sarcasm, even adding, "What a pity that so fine an ordeal has been lost." Thanks to Voltaire's sharp wit and huge influence, what had been a dusty, obscure anecdote suddenly found a second life. People ate it up. Fast forward again, and along comes the Da Vinci Code. Dan Brown didn't invent the story, but he sure knew how to package it. In his blockbuster novel, he claimed that Constantine not only sponsored a new Bible, but deliberately cut out certain Gospels that showed Jesus as more human and promoted the ones that made him more divine. It was a fantastic thriller plot. Secret councils, hidden books, powerful emperors shaping religion. Historically, not even close. Scholars of every background tore that claim to shreds. Bart Ehrman, a New Testament scholar who doesn't even approach the Bible from a Christian faith perspective, said flat out that Brown's version is wrong about just about everything when it comes to Constantine and the Council of Nicaea. But by then, the story had already reached millions of readers. And once a myth gets that kind of stage time, it sticks. The internet has only made things worse. Once the web and social media came along, these kinds of alternative history theories found new life. People who were already skeptical of Christianity or organized religion shared them widely, and echo chambers formed where myths started sounding like facts. Suddenly, a quirky anecdote from the Middle Ages, recycled by an Enlightenment wit and dramatized in a 21st century thriller, became the truth for countless people scrolling through forums and Facebook posts. But eyewitnesses who were actually at Nicaea never mentioned anything like this. Instead, the council focused on three main things: the Arian controversy, which led to the Nicene Creed; setting a universal date for Easter; issuing new church laws, called canons, to guide discipline and order in the church. As for the Bible, its canon developed over centuries. By the time of Nicaea, many books were already widely accepted, and others were still being debated. The final list of the 27 New Testament books we know today wasn't officially recognized until decades later, in 367 AD by Athanasius, and confirmed by other councils in the late 300s. The Old Testament was already largely settled by then, too. So, no, Constantine didn't rewrite the Bible. What he did do was gather bishops, settle a heated theological debate, and set the stage for the Nicene Creed. And that brings us to the real question: why does this myth just keep coming back, no matter how many times historians put it down? It's almost like a historical zombie. You can debunk it, bury it, explain it 100 times, but it crawls right back into the conversation again and again. Part of the reason is that people love conspiracy theories. The idea that a handful of powerful men secretly decided what went into the Bible is dramatic and cinematic. There's also the appeal of undermining authority. If you can say the Bible was basically cooked up at a political council, then you can argue that it isn't divinely inspired at all, just a tool of control. For people who want to dismiss Christianity, it's an easy, punchy argument. It also fits neatly into the wider set of anti-Christian talking points, like Constantine invented Christianity or Easter is just pagan, all of which make for quick debate wins on social media, even if they're historically weak. Another reason it persists is that the real story is complicated. The biblical canon wasn't decided in a single dramatic moment, it evolved. Different Christian communities already had lists of accepted books long before Nicaea, and it took centuries of discussion, debate, and consensus before the full shape of the canon we know today was recognized. That's not nearly as flashy as bishops watching scrolls levitate like some ancient sorting hat. And let's be honest, most people just don't know much about early Christian history. It's not something we're taught in school, and unless you go digging, the only time you hear about Nicaea is through pop culture, which means if you've read the Da Vinci Code or seen a post online claiming Constantine created the Bible, it's easy to take it at face value. But when you strip away the myths, what you're left with is still fascinating. The Council of Nicaea was about hammering out what Christians believed about Jesus. It was about unity in the church and stability in the empire. It produced the Nicene Creed, which continues to shape Christian faith today. It also addressed other important issues like setting a unified date for Easter, issuing new church laws to guide discipline and leadership, and even resolving internal disputes like the Meletian Schism in Egypt. So the next time you hear someone say the Bible was made up at Nicaea, you'll know better. And now you get to decide, do you pass the myth along or do you tell the story as it really was? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you'd like to see more history myth busting like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel.